this video, I'm telling you guys 10 things that controller pros do that you don't do. The first thing that pro controller players do that you don't is they play on smooth and consistent settings rather than fast and flashy settings. Let me pop up the settings of 3 of the current best competitive controller players right now: Miro, Day, and TK. These 3 are all crazy players and have super similar settings. And the settings that all 3 of these guys are on are meant for being consistent in hitting shots and being consistent to placing builds and hitting edits. While on the other hand, if you look at some controller creative warriors like Sarah or Parm, their settings are super fast and flashy for hitting really cool clips. So if you want to do well on controller, make your settings smooth and consistent and not fast and flashy. The second thing that controller pros do that you don't is they have a consistent practice schedule that they stick to. All these guys need to be at the top of their game, so they have really quality routines that they go through to train every day to continue to perform at a top level. Now, the third thing that pro controller players do that the average player does not is they use claw or paddle. Going back to the 3 best competitive controller players, Miro, Day, and TK, all 3 of these guys play claw on a PS4 or PS5 controller. Looking through every single notable controller pro, there's really only maybe 2 players that play standard grip on controller, with standard grip being that they don't use claw or paddles. Otherwise, every other good controller player you name is either playing with paddles or claw because it's simply better. It's easier to get good at Fortnite by using claw or paddles, and in my view, the claw and paddles players have more room to improve. Of course, there's a small percentage that are really good without claw or paddles, but when something like 95 of controller pro players are using either claw or paddles, I think that's a pretty good sign that it's smart to use them if you want to get good. The fourth thing that controller pros do that the average player does not is that pros stay on the same controller settings and rarely change them. Most pro controller players have been playing since early in chapter 1, so all of them have been playing since the advanced controller settings have been out. The settings tab that we have now came out in season X almost exactly 3 entire years ago, which on a side note, that's crazy that Fortnite chapter 1 was that long ago. Anyway, controller settings have been the same since then, and it really didn't take too long for good players to find the most optimal settings. So if we look at the settings from pro players like Miro and Scope all the way back 3 years ago in 2019, and then we compare those to their current settings, you can see that they're still really similar. Most of these controller pros have been nearly on the same settings for years at this point, and it's super helpful because once you use the same settings for so long, you build like muscle memory and know exactly how far to move your stick to be accurate with your shots, builds, and edits. When you change your settings, even though it might not feel totally different, you're resetting the muscle memory you've built, and it's going to make you less accurate, less consistent, until you really get used to them again. The fifth thing that controller pros do that you don't is they use both confirm edit on release and double edit bind. I even just learned this recently from G Money, but lots of controller pros have confirm edit on release turned on, but they don't solely use confirm edit on release. G Money says that he uses edit on release on ramps and walls, but if he's doing like double edits, triple edits, stuff like that, he's clicking his confirm bind. He also mentioned that there are lots of pro controller players that do the same thing, which is pretty interesting. So pro players don't only rely on one or the other, they're actually utilizing both. The sixth thing that controller pros do that the average player does not is they know how to play box fights from a box away, especially on higher ping. On higher ping, even like 40 ping and up, these pro players have to adapt to the ping advantage that the game gives their opponents by changing their playstyle. I play on 50 to 60 ping in arena most of the time, so I can't really just W key and get everyone's wall for an easy kill. What these pros that aren't on 0 ping have figured out and gotten really good at is making sure there's always at least 2 walls between them and an opponent, so their opponent can't steal the wall and kill them right away. It's not even really something that's hard to do, but it's something that has to be practiced to know when and where you need it. The seventh thing that pro controller players do that the average player does not is they know how to disengage from fights. Along with controller pros being really good at fighting, they're also really good at recognizing when they shouldn't fight or when they should disengage from a fight. Especially in solos, once a third party comes in, or even if the fight is just slow and you're at a disadvantage, knowing how to disengage is huge. Being able to sneak away and refresh your mats, find some heals, you literally completely save your game. You don't always have to only fight to win or lose, and you don't have to have rotation to disengage. A good recommendation is to make sure you have at least 200 mats, and then most of the time you can literally just like dip out of the bottom of a fight while the other players aren't really paying any attention. The eighth thing that controller pros do that the average player does not is they completely optimize their game to the fullest extent for the smoothest gameplay and least input lag. Most pro controller players are almost freaks about the optimization of their PCs. These guys play on very specific graphic settings. They pay PC tweakers to optimize their PCs. They overclock their controllers and do literally every tiny thing to get the best performance, and it can definitely pay off for them. To not have any input lag on a controller is huge, and instantly makes you better at the game. And combine that with having consistently good FPS with no drops, even in endgame of tournaments, is a huge advantage. The ninth thing that controller pros do that the average does not is they don't play scared. Pro controller players are so insanely experienced that confidence in their gameplay comes natural. Even in a really intense 1v2 endgame with thousands of dollars on the line, most of these top tier controller pros are still calm and are able to hit their shots. I don't think there's any point where any top controller pro immediately boxes up or plays like they're scared to fight. And having that confidence in their gameplay is actually huge. It helps so much. As a less experienced non-pro controller player, you can still sort of front that confidence and just act like they do. You don't necessarily have to have all that same experience or be as good as they are, but just acting like you're really good at the game actually helps your skill a ton. Now, the 10th thing that controller pros do that the average player does not is they learn and adapt as the game changes. Pro players that have lasted this long into the game have figured out how to really change with the game by being flexible and adapting to things. We've been through metas where shotguns were super important, we've been through metas where SMGs were better than shotguns, and we've been through every meta in between. As an example, Fortnite has added sliding, sprinting, mantling, all this stuff that pro players have had to figure out to continue to succeed at the pro level. What these guys don't do is get stuck in their old ways like a lot of normal players do. They don't continue to use the default binds because they're comfortable with them. They change them to be super optimized and as good as possible, and with each update they adapt to the new game to make sure they stay on top. So those are 10 things that Fortnite controller pros do that the average player does not. Remember to subscribe, go check out Novos, and I hope to catch you guys in a future video. Thanks for watching.